Hello and welcome to another live Yamaha Q&A session. So in normal circumstances we run workshops in our Wellington showroom, but with things being as they are, obviously that's not possible. But happily those good people at Yamaha have kindly given us the opportunity to speak to rising stars from their Black Book of Artists. Previously we spoke to trumpeter Matilda Lloyd, and tonight we're speaking to the classical saxophonist Rob Burton. I spoke to Rob a couple of weeks ago on what had been a bit of a down lockdown day. Nothing specifically bad had happened, but I was just having a bit of a difficult day. And Rob's charisma, enthusiasm and love of music really lifted me and motivated me as a musician. So I'm really happy you're here. Rob has got an infectious spirit, which we could all do with sometimes. Now, whether you first heard of Rob in the 2018 BBC Young Musician competition or not, it's clear he's going to have a fantastic career in music. Whilst at only 20 years old, Rob's won loads of awards for his playing, and it's clearly more than his technical ability which makes him so engaging. So we're going to start tonight with a solo performance, which Rob will announce, and then Rob will answer your questions. We've had many sent in advance, and I've got plenty of my own. And now I'll introduce Rob, who's been hiding behind the black screen. Hello! Okay, over to you. I'm going to mute myself and just disappear, and you can take over.
Okay. Well, hello and thank you for joining this webinar. I'm going to start by actually doing a bit of playing. I'm going to play one of my actually favourite ever pieces. It was one of the pieces that got me into playing classical saxophone, and one of the first pieces that my teacher set me when I started studying at the Junior Guildhall School of Music when I was 13 years old. It is Robert Planel's Prelude and Sauterelle. This piece, well, enjoining the initial prelude with the Sauterelle, which is actually a jumping dance, it goes through this amazing cadenza that really kind of explores the colours and the possibilities of the saxophone. It was written actually to show off the saxophone and to kind of test saxophonists as a Paris Conservatoire test piece for the saxophone class there. So I will be playing this. It's only a short section of the piece, but I think you'll really enjoy it.
Wow. Do you know what amazes me most is just the stamina that you have and just the breath control. I don't think I could do it, but I've also had two children, so I definitely couldn't do it. I want to start from the very beginning so that we can go through to the questions that we've got. Now I know that I know some of the answers to these already, but I'm hoping you don't mind telling me again. So I'd hope we could maybe start from the very beginning about how you got into music. I love the FOMO story, especially. Yes, most specifically, Lisa Jackson wanted to know when you first decided to start a play instrument and why. So I think that helps.
Yes. So the reason why I actually started kind of getting into music was actually because my friends at primary school all signed up for Recorder Club, but I didn't. And I heard them telling the teacher one day, saying, "Miss, I've signed up to Recorder Club, I've signed up to Recorder Club," because there was like a sign-up sheet for this Recorder Club, which everyone seemed to be joining. And I got so jealous that all of my friends were going to be doing Recorder Club. And I had no idea what Recorder Club is. I probably didn't even know what a recorder was at the time. I was, I think, about 5 years old. And my parents are completely non-musical, and so yeah, I probably didn't know what a recorder was at the time. And so I went up to the teacher and said, "Miss, I'm doing a Recorder Club too." And the teacher was like, "No, you're not. Your name isn't on the Recorder Club list." And so she then added my name onto the Recorder Club list because she thought it must have been a mistake. And that's how I kind of enrolled in this Recorder Club, which was basically kind of class lessons of a group of about 3 or 4 people. And so my parents had to go out probably the next day to buy me a recorder so that I could actually participate in this class. And so that's how I started on the recorder. So I went along with that for a few years, and the start was a bit tricky for both me and for my family listening. But I think I just kind of got the hang of it faster than my other friends at school did. And whilst everyone was kind of dropping out of Recorder Club because they had more important things, football and so on, to be involved with at school, Recorder was kind of, it felt like my thing. It was the kind of thing that I wanted to keep going with. And it was a few years later after I'd also picked up piano lessons, because I used to go and watch my brother having his piano lessons, and I got a bit jealous of him as well. Yeah. Oh, I want to start there as well. And then they started offering music lessons in woodwind instruments at my primary school, and it came at just the perfect time. My parents had already spent a few years showing me cool saxophone solos from their favourite pop songs, from like Baker Street and Careless Whisper and Sade, and like the music that they loved growing up, and they kind of passed that love onto that music to me, and I just kind of fell in love with the saxophone. And so at school they were offering either clarinet, flute or saxophone lessons, and I just knew that I had to learn the saxophone because I was already kind of getting to grips with the recorder by this.
Yeah.
And saxophone just kind of felt like a good follow-on. And I kept playing the recorder actually for probably about 4 or 5 years after I started the saxophone, because I still loved that. But so that's how I got started on the saxophone.
And so do you still play the recorder now in any shape or form?
Not really. So I got to a stage when I was about 14 years old where I was kind of doing a bit too much. I was doing my classical saxophone lessons, which I was actually travelling from Cambridge to London for, at the Junior Guildhall School of Music. I was also doing jazz saxophone lessons on the side. I was still studying piano. I was also trying to teach myself the clarinet, and I was also having my recorder lessons. And this is during kind of getting towards GCSE time, and it was just a bit too much. So I thought, am I
doing too much.
what do I want a career in? I thought
Yeah.
the saxophone would be an amazing thing to have a career in. Whilst I loved recorder, I kind of, yeah, I ended up using the saxophone over it.
So was it alto specifically you wanted? Adam Walker wanted to know what made you decide to take up the soprano sax. So I'm assuming you started with the alto first and then went on to soprano?
Yeah, so I started playing alto when I was 9, and kind of as soon as I started playing alto, well, I just became obsessed with music and saxophones in general then. And I'd come home from school and I'd go on the computer and I'd spend ages just looking at photos of various saxophones, various brands, various things. And I just got obsessed with soprano saxophones, like completely obsessed. And I kept saying to my teacher at the time, like, I really want to play the soprano saxophone. And my teacher was saying, like, oh, soprano saxophones are really, really unforgiving. And I just really wanted to play the soprano, just because I had it in my head, like, oh, it's straight, it looks different,
Yeah, yeah.
cool. I could be like Kenny G, and so after a while, once I kind of got good enough on my alto, then I started playing the soprano.
So what point would you think you actually decided to take it seriously? Was there a point you were driven by the grades, or was it specific pieces or competitions? What was the driving force and make it change?
Well, I don't know. It was quite weird. There wasn't really a point where I decided to take music seriously. It kind of always felt as though it was kind of the thing that I was destined to do in a way. Like growing up, going through school, not many people at my primary school were very musical, and so by taking these recorder lessons, starting clarinet, saxophone, and piano, music kind of just became my thing quite quickly.
Yeah.
And just because I was kind of weirdly obsessed with it at a young age, it was all I could think about and all I could do. Um,
So
and so
no pressure to sort of take on the family business of like going to farming.
not too much, but I've got an older brother and he's kind of going more down that route. So there wasn't too much pressure to go into
Sure.
farming. And I think because my parents really supported me at that age to kind of do as much music as I could, and they'd take me to all of my ensembles and all of my lessons, it kind of, I don't know, it just became like
Yeah.
the normal thing. And so
Yeah.
growing up, I kind of just always knew I wanted to go to conservatoire and study music, and I wanted to kind of, I can't imagine really doing anything else.
No. So can you drive a tractor? And
Yeah, but not too well.
no. Yeah, yeah. I don't think I could do one too well either. So I'd like to talk about awards for younger musicians because obviously I know that they supported you.
Yeah.
How did they help you?
So I got involved with awards for young musicians when, gosh, I think I must have been around about sort of 14 years old, I think. And I heard about all the work that they do with young musicians and how they kind of help them out financially and give them various opportunities. And at that time, it just kind of felt like a great thing. And because I was having all of these music lessons at that time, that's when I was trying to balance all of my instruments. And I really wanted to start taking jazz saxophone lessons to kind of help supplement what I was doing classically. So I applied for some funding from Awards for Young Musicians, and they very kindly kind of took me under their arm and helped me out financially. And they've also given me various performance opportunities since then, various things in London.
Did you perform with Jess Gillum as well?
Yes, yes, I did
Yeah.
something with them,
Yeah.
with Jess.
Oh, that's great. So now what made you go into classical saxophone as opposed to, jazz?
Yeah, so this is kind of a funny story. So obviously I got into saxophone because my parents loved pop and jazz music in saxophone, and that's kind of what I had in my head that I really wanted to do. And it wasn't until I auditioned for the Junior Guildhall School of Music when I was 13, because my teacher at the time was saying, like, I'm not sure I can take you too much further with your playing. I think you should go and study at one of the London conservatoires. And that thought was a bit kind of, whoa, I'm going to have to travel to London just to have saxophone lessons, which is sort of about an hour and a half travelling from where I live at home. So that was kind of a massive change in my life, and a kind of a big change in gear as well, and musically. And so I auditioned for Junior Guildhall. I got a place, and when just before I started, I had to fill in a form saying what instrument I was going to be studying there. And I was slightly confused by this form because it had clarinet, flute, oboe, everything on it. And then it had jazz saxophone or saxophone. And I didn't know what the difference was. I thought that all saxophone was jazz saxophone, because I didn't know that anything else existed. I kind of went through my grades choosing the jazz pieces off every syllabus, because that's what I was interested in.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at this, like, saxophone or jazz saxophone. And me and my family spent ages just looking at it, like, what does this mean? It's very confusing. And I thought possibly that jazz saxophone was kind of the same as just saxophone, but just saxophone might have other things in it, like, well, at the time I thought that I'd play samba music and tangos, and I wasn't really sure, as you can probably tell, what it was. And so I thought, you know what, to be a well-rounded musician, let's just take these saxophone lessons and see what happens. And so I ticked the saxophone box, sent it back to Junior Guildhall, started my lessons in the September. Turns out it was classical saxophone lessons, and I'd never really played any classical saxophone before, had no idea what I was really doing there, and I was very confused for the first few weeks. But I had a phenomenal teacher there that made me feel kind of so welcome in the classical saxophone world, and I started learning some amazing repertoire, like the piece that I played at the start of this webinar. And it made me fall in love with the sound of the instrument and just kind of everything about it. And yeah, so that's how I ended up getting into saxophone.
Fantastic. And so how did you get involved with a young musician then? Was that whilst you were still at Guildhall then?
That was a transition period, just after leaving Junior Guildhall and while I was starting my undergraduate degree at the Royal Academy of Music. So I mean, I'd watched the BBC Young Musician competition growing up every single time it was on TV, and I just loved watching it. I probably started watching it even kind of before I got into music, and I kind of never had it in my head that I could be someone that was on there. It was just kind of, I'd watch it and I'd be like, whoa, these people are amazing. And then I'd go and chat to my friends at Junior Guildhall saying like, oh, did you see this oboist on there? Did you see this saxophonist? Yeah, they sounded great. And it kind of became like a weird thing that we'd gossip about and say like what we liked, and it just kind of seemed like a reality TV show when I was growing up, and I loved it. I kind of lived for it. And then it came around to a time that I had the opportunity of auditioning, and I was kind of saying like, no, I won't audition, like there's no point. And my parents were the ones that were kind of like, you know what, like you should go for it, just try, like what could go wrong. And so I thought, you know what, okay, maybe I'll just like fill in the application form and send it in and see what happens. And because this was my last chance to do it as well, because the competition was it's kind of up to 18, 19 years.
Okay.
And so I was at the very end of the age limit. So I thought, you know what, I'll go for it. Like, I like watching it on TV, but I mean, I just treat any kind of competitions as just a opportunity to perform a piece and get it more under my fingers. And so that's how I ended up going for it. And weirdly, I ended up getting through literally all the rounds.
So how many rounds were there?
So there was an initial round in London, which was a nightmare. Funny story, actually. I slept through the first audition because I was I was so full of cold around that time. This was about, I think it was about September, October time. I'd just started my degree in London, and I got super ill, like super ill, just at the start of my degree. And each night I had to take like load of medicine just to like help me sleep.
Sure.
And so the night before my BBC Young Musician first round audition, I had to take loads of medicine in order for me to sleep. But then what I didn't think about was that all this medicine might actually stop me from waking up.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So I slept through literally all of my alarms. My audition was at 10 a.m. the next morning, and I woke up at like 11.
Oh no.
With so many missed calls from my accompanist saying, "Where are you? What's going on? Why are you not at the audition?" I had to literally just put some clothes on, get in a taxi, and get to my audition. And they managed to reschedule me for a few hours later, very luckily. But I was like, you know what? I've blown it. Like this isn't going to happen anymore. Like I'm out of the competition already. Obviously I had the worst cold in the world, so I played horrendously. And it was kind of like, ugh, at least that's over now. Like another stress out of the way. And then I got through that round. Weirdly, I have no idea how. And then the next round was in Cardiff, which I travelled to, and that it went okay. I felt like I kind of managed to, when I performed, I kind of gave a good kind of part of myself in the performance.
Yeah.
And I guess they seemed to like that. And then I got through to the televised round. So the first televised round was the Woodwind category final.
Yeah.
Which, was terrifying because it was on TV. And that was the first time I'd ever been on TV. And I had to play my saxophone. And it was terrifying. And then I got through that. And then there was the semi-final. And then after that, there was the grand final.
Yeah.
Which I got to.
So how did you cope with the nerves?
I'm not really sure, because I think most of my nerves were kind of about what happens if it goes wrong, because obviously it's on television, and I didn't want to kind of play the saxophone badly and then have a bad reputation or anything. So most of my nerves were kind of in the preparation for the competition. Like, okay, I need to make sure that everything's under my fingers so that I can kind of do myself justice in a way.
Yeah.
And when I was actually there on stage performing, I didn't notice any of the cameras. I'd forgotten all about the 3 days of interviews I'd been doing beforehand, and it was just kind of about the music in the moment.
Just keep in focus.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. That's the way to do it, isn't it? Keep focused. So since doing the Young Musician, has it opened up any opportunities for you, since then, concerts or,
Yeah, so it's been absolutely amazing for kind of my career so far, because before the competition, I don't think I'd ever done like a solo recital before. I had kind of, not much kind of belief in myself as a player, and I wasn't really doing anything. I was just kind of going to my lessons, maybe doing the odd competition throughout each year. But that was kind of it. But since the competition, I've been doing so many recitals and so many concerto performances. And I feel like just the amount of performing I've been doing has made me improve massively.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because I was slightly stalking you on YouTube, as you do, but you did send me some links, so you kind of gave me permission. So I watched, there's a piece that you sent me recently that you played in March, that I can't say it, the fantasy, there's a Desmond one.
Yes.
Correct me. And you also played that in the Guildhall when you were 16.
Yes.
And I first heard the one at the Guildhall and I was like, wow, he's a really good player. And then I see you playing the same piece but 4 years later, and it's amazing, how you've lifted it and you've created obviously a piece that you already knew but made it new and really exciting, and you can definitely see the performance has changed. So yeah, well done for that. You practiced really hard, well done. So obviously the more you perform, the better the better that you get holding those nerves and everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so I'm going to just track over some of the questions that I've got along with that on that track. So do people treat you differently because of the young musician?
I think so. Well, I mean, obviously, like, people have been treating me differently because they've been giving me more performing opportunities.
Yeah.
But I mean, no one's kind of treated me differently in a bad way,
Yeah.
I guess. But it's nice to kind of have something behind me that kind of has helped give me kind of more of a reputation as a musician.
Yeah.
I think that kind of, like, in terms of career, is a very useful thing. I think that's what BBC Young Musician is absolutely great for. It's such a great platform and it's a well recognised name.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So whilst we're in the subject of concerts and performance, Jane Long wants to know, which concert have you enjoyed the most?
I don't know. There's a few different answers I could give to this. One of them is probably the best venue I've played at would probably be Buckingham Palace.
Wow.
Which was an amazing place to play. But also playing with the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra in Birmingham Symphony Hall for the Young Musician Final. That was, like, completely surreal.
Yeah.
That was, like, the most incredible acoustic ever. Like, genuinely, you would be able to hear a pin drop at the back of the hall.
Wow. A bit different to our environments that we're in at the moment. Just like sound checking.
Exactly the same, yeah.
So one question about Buckingham Palace. Who did you play to there?
So that concert was actually through another organisation called Future Talent, who, like Awards for Young Musicians, have also been helping me over the past, I don't know how many years now, maybe sort of 5 or 6 years. And they've been absolutely amazing. I applied to them for some financial help with music lessons and actually purchasing this saxophone I have.
Yes, we're going to talk about saxes shortly, don't you worry.
And they've been helping me out enormously since that. They've given me so many amazing performance opportunities and really helped kind of be almost like a family that's been helping me. And even though I'm not one of their young musicians that they're supporting now, as a alumni, they still really help me out. So they have given me performance opportunities at Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace.
Wow.
And the one at Buckingham Palace, that was actually kind of like almost like a fundraiser event for them. So they had lots of very prestigious musicians who came, like big names, and so it was amazing being able to play to people that I look up to. Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent stuff. Right, so we've got to do some playing now. I think we've got a few practical questions coming up.
Okay.
Now, firstly, whilst you Petra McKay wants to know, how long do you practice a day?
So this varies. I mean, I don't kind of strive for a number of hours. I kind of practice however much I need to at the time. If I've got something big coming up, it'll be different to if I'm kind of having a weekend where I can kind of be a bit more relaxed about my practice. But at music college, some days I've got maybe 8 to 10 hours of rehearsals. So fitting practice in around that is crazy. But I mean, every kind of rehearsal feels like practice in a way. If you're kind of focused in the right way and thinking about technique, then even a rehearsal can feel like you're doing some good practice. But yeah, usually kind of practice, me in a practice room, that is usually sort of 2 to 4 hours a day. Yeah,
that's still quite a lot. And so when you're doing that, do you break it into chunks? Do you say, right, I'm going to spend...
So I definitely break it into chunks. I usually kind of will do maybe an hour and a half at most at a time, but I'll still break that up into like 30-minute chunks with a kind of 5-minute breather.
And so are those chunks of like scales, technical pieces?
Yeah, so I usually try to break it up into the first section will be kind of like a warm-up type thing, where I'll probably spend sort of 5-10 minutes warming up and then probably do about 20 minutes of of scales, and then I'll work on various repertoire for the rest of the time. And then because I usually practice early in the morning, and then I'll do some later in the afternoon or evening to kind of get more done in the day.
Sure.
But yeah, I cannot focus for more than sort of an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
I keep trying to practice in the same session. I go a bit loopy.
Do you find that your practice, what you might practice in the morning is different to what you might practice in the evening as well, because of, exhaustion?
Yeah,
and
definitely. My practice in the morning is very kind of based on fundamentals and warming up and kind of getting myself ready for the day. Kind of almost like if I run in the morning, like that's kind of essentially.
Yeah, it is like that. It is really, because you've got to have that breath control. You need to work on that. So, on that note, Katrin Roberts wants to know if you've got any good tone and breathing tips or exercises. So if you want to demonstrate any of those, then, please, that would be great.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing to do for tone is just like listening to yourself as much as possible. And I guess that's kind of what I've been doing over the past few years, and it seemed to work for me. Whenever I'm playing, I try and play with the best sound I possibly can. And one of the main things I think is having a good setup that works for you. So like mouthpiece, reeds, ligature, something that creates the sound closest to what you want. Because if you're playing on a reed that's horrendously hard or really, really soft, you're not going to be able to make a good sound. And finding something that really works, has the right amount of resistance, you can achieve the colours that you want to in your sound. I think that's kind of a good starting point. And then it's just listening to your sound as much as you can. Whenever you're playing any pieces, if there's a sound that you're creating that you're not really liking, like if it sounds a bit too bitey or if it sounds too airy, then like by just noticing that, you'll kind of automatically adjust your embouchure and your kind of throat position and how much air you're using and how much you're biting, how much like lip pressure you're using.
So those tone exercises might just be on a single note perhaps, and just really listen to the sound. And perhaps, do you think it's better to record the sound so that you get it from another perspective as well, rather than when you're up close to it? Does that make a difference?
I don't know. I have a bit of an issue with recording myself playing because, well, when I started the Royal Academy, I used to record myself playing a lot, and then rather than listening to my sound, how it's coming out of the instrument, I'd end up listening to the sound with all the crackles and all the distortion that my phone's adding. And I started to believe that it was me creating that horrible sound. And so I tried to get away from that. And I think that if you are enjoying the sound you're making on the instrument, then people who are on the other side of the audience are going to enjoy it. Because you're the one that's got to listen, got to live with the sound that you're making. Yeah,
and I suppose it's also sort of getting into that zone as well of playing, that you really are focused without those distractions. Biggest tip to getting all around rich tone, I think we've covered that, haven't we? And good tone and breathing tips, exercises. So did you want to show any of the other exercises that perhaps you could do for those, or flexibility ones perhaps, maybe? Or because that would kind of answer Jane's question, Jane Plumage. Are there any drills or particular exercises that you do every time you practice, and why? I mean, obviously there's ones you do just to sort of like warm up the instrument, but the ones that you use as well.
I mean, there's no kind of particular drills. I mean, the main thing I do, and I mean, I don't really need to demonstrate this, but it's just scales. And kind of the more I've progressed as a musician, the more I've realised how important scales are. Like, it's crazy how every single thing musically you can basically achieve in your scales. And I use scales for circular breathing exercise or tonguing exercise, double tonguing, all sorts of things, as well as trying to match my sound from high notes to low notes. Also just in like tone and sound, my fingers, agility, literally everything. So I think scales, and like especially scale patterns, like scales in thirds, scales in fourths, scales in fifths, to also work on intervals, all of that is good stuff.
Do you have any favourite scales?
Um, no, I don't think so. I guess the easy ones.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
The things that fall under the fingers nicely, like C major, D major, G major, they all fit nicely under my fingers. If I pick up my saxophone, I automatically will probably just play a D major.
Yeah,
Like,
it's funny because Jacqueline Gum asked, are scales essential for improvisation? But I think, as we've clarified, they're pretty essential for everything. So
everything.
you've just got to learn to love them. It's like broccoli, isn't it? Just got to learn to love
Exactly.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to find what you want in them. I think if you're just playing scales, I mean, I think this is the issue of having scales for grade exams. They kind of become like a chore.
Yeah.
Growing up, I hated scales, but now if I spend sort of an hour practicing scales one day, I'll revisit the saxophone later, and everything works so much better. And I think um, well, I mean, sometimes if I'm playing a piece and I'll get stuck on something technical, I'm trying to fix it in the piece. I'm trying to adjust things. I'm trying to change things. I'm trying to move my fingers differently. Whereas if I basically in the start of my practice, if I try and do all the technical work, then everything should work.
Yeah.
Tackling my repertoire.
So perhaps doing the scales, would you do them in different rhythms then? Perhaps would that help? Trying with different dynamic ranges and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So, well, we should talk about your saxophone and your complete setup. There's a great story about how you you started on Yamaha, and now you've got these Yamaha gold-plated saxophones.
Yes.
Tell us the story.
So my first ever saxophone I got when I was 9 years old was a Yamaha. It was a YAS 275, and it was kind of one of the more pricey saxophones of the beginner instruments. But my parents had heard from loads of their friends that Yamaha was the one. That was the instrument that you needed to get started. And because I already played the recorder, I kind of knew that I was going to have a kind of a running start to the saxophone. I ended up getting the Yamaha, and then a few years later I upgraded my saxophone, and that instrument was also a Yamaha, and I just loved the instruments. They just felt so comfortable under my fingers, and when I played, and I think the nice thing about the saxophone is that when you play, it almost feels as though the saxophone's inside you in a very weird way. Because everything's kind of connected to the saxophone, and because of your breath, it feels like part of you. Like, I don't feel like I'm kind of blowing air down the metal tube. I just feel like something's happening here.
Well, that comes across in your playing. That's I think that's why that your control over the saxophone. It does feel, it just sounds like you are in the saxophone. Just one.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and that's kind of what I want in a saxophone. I want something that does feel like me, and I think because I'd just played on Yamaha before, I'd kind of found myself in these Yamaha saxophones. And it was actually just before the BBC Young Musician Grand Final, I got put in touch with someone who worked at Yamaha through one of my professors, my Alexander Technique professor at the Royal Academy. And so I got put in touch with this person at Yamaha, and we decided to meet up for a coffee. And I got speaking to him about my saxophones, about how much I love them, and we just kind of talked about music and about Yamaha and saxophones, and it kind of got to a point in the conversation where he said, like, we should probably have a look at getting you a new alto if you want one. And because I was playing on kind of a low level professional instrument, or some people would say it's an intermediate level instrument at the time, and I'd just competed in the Young Musician Grand Final, so I felt like it was kind of a time to upgrade to a professional model instrument. And so I was kind of looking at various Yamaha models, and it was between getting a normal gold lacquer Yamaha YAS 875 EX, or they also offered a gold plated model. And I thought, you know what, I really want a gold plated model, because it's not just gold lacquer, it's gold plated. And I was like,
Yeah.
that sounds amazing. And I'd once seen one in a music shop in London, and it's like, it was the goldest thing I've ever, like, so gold. Like, it almost had like a halo type thing.
Yeah.
And I'd seen it this one time, and I dreamt about it. And so I thought, ooh, since they're incredibly rare, bear in mind. But I thought, since I'm dealing with Yamaha directly, maybe they could kind of track one down for me. And it was actually sort of about 5 or 6 months later, they managed to get one over to London for me to try. And it's this instrument, and I played it once, and it just felt right, and I've loved it ever since.
Yeah. So has your saxophone got a name?
No, it hasn't. I was hoping it would. I was hoping when I got it, like a name would just come to me.
Not the name of the Yamaha rep or anything.
Not quite. No.
No.
Maybe a name will come upon me.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe so. And so, what about the rest of your setup then? So obviously, there's mouthpiece, reeds, and ligature.
Yes. So my mouthpiece is a Van Doren mouthpiece, and I'm very happy to kind of be an endorser of Yamaha products as well. And I've been playing on this mouthpiece for a few years now, and I absolutely adore it. It's a Van Doren AL3, one of their optimum mouthpieces. And it's perfect. It's kind of everything I want in a mouthpiece. The sound that it creates is just kind of so warm and rounded, which is what I love. And it's kind of a very vocal sound, not kind of too direct or pointed. So yeah, I love it. And I also play on Van Doren reeds, and this is a Van Doren Masters Optimum ligature.
And so, is that the mouthpiece that you've had the whole time?
No, so I actually started playing on this mouthpiece about 3 years ago, just after the BBC Young Musician grand final, because the mouthpiece I was playing on beforehand I'd had for a few too many years, and it had started to kind of change a bit, and it essentially died. My teacher tried playing the mouthpiece I was playing on then, and he was like, this is weird, like, this is not good, you need to get yourself a new mouthpiece. And I found this one, which I love.
That's really interesting, because you think that being a solid thing that it wouldn't do that, but that's interesting. People perhaps should, even if they've got after a few years, maybe just check their mouthpiece and test it against a new one and see if it has died.
Yeah, lots of people say like, oh no, mouthpieces don't change or they don't die. But I've also spoken to lots of people that have said, I've had this particular mouthpiece, I've had it 10 years, tried a new one, and it's completely different. So I think it's worth kind of, if there's a mouthpiece that you've loved and you don't like it anymore, it's worth trying a new version of that same model out to see if there's...
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the music shop, we see plenty which get chewed up, especially by beginners. I mean, full on teeth.
Yeah,
into it. It's quite something. Okay, so, right, well, thinking about where we are now in the situation, how are you dealing with lockdown and your playing progress? Obviously, you're living with your parents as well, so they're enjoying having you around, you're enjoying being there. How are you coping?
I mean, it's weird, because I was originally living in London in a flat with some other musicians, and they both went back home, and so I thought, I don't want to be in London alone, so I decided to come back to live with my parents. And it's actually been so lovely, because we live kind of in the middle of nowhere. My family are farmers, so we have got so much kind of land we can walk around, and it's very freeing, especially at a time like this, where I know if I was in London, I'd be terrified to leave my flat.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's so nice to go on walks and just enjoy because we've had such nice weather, so it's nice to be able to enjoy that. But also, it's nice to be with my family, and I feel very kind of comfortable here. And in terms of playing progress, I mean, it's difficult, because when I'm at the Royal Academy of Music, I'm surrounded by so many musicians constantly. I'm constantly having rehearsals and projects and various things I'm doing. And now I haven't heard a single person play an instrument for 2 months, which is
Gosh,
like
yeah,
unheard of for me.
it's long, isn't it?
And I think what I'm craving is just being able to hear like a beautiful oboe sound in the distance, or something like that. So it is. I am finding it hard to kind of keep motivation up, but I think by setting myself little goals, little kind of different bits of repertoire that I want to tackle each week, and by having my Zoom lessons with my teachers, that's kind of giving me somewhere to aim for.
Mm.
So yeah.
So what's your situation then with teachers? You've got two teachers.
Yes, so I've got one teacher, Hugh Wiggin, who teaches me at the Royal Academy of Music, and I'm also, over the past year, I've been having lessons with an amazing guy called Lars Mlekush in Zurich, which has been amazing to learn from him. So I'm kind of having some Zoom lessons with both of them at the moment.
It's going well. And so the teachers, they give you something very different to each other.
Yeah. So my teacher that I have in London, we kind of tackle the kind of repertoire that I'd be playing in my recitals and my concertos and things like that, kind of stuff that I'm doing more in like my professional life in a way, because it is quite hard balancing having so many concerts but also improving like on the saxophone on the side of that, because there's so much repertoire. If I didn't have like I think in October I had about 4 concertos and 4 recitals, so it was, and lots of travel in between that, and it was a bit mad. So doing concert repertoire and improving is a challenge, but it's nice having him in London that I can kind of work on that music with, and then someone that I have in a different country who kind of challenges me with contemporary repertoire and kind of pushes me in a different direction, which is nice.
Great stuff. So is there you played the Creston, that piece in the Young Musician. Did you feel like, now you've sort of set yourself a target of always bringing new music perhaps to your performances? Perhaps?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't feel like there's any pressure to bring new music. But I mean, as a classical saxophonist, I feel like in a way you are always bringing something slightly new, because most people, well, I mean, before I started, I hadn't heard of classical saxophone.
Yeah.
So I think a general audience, people are experiencing it as kind of a new thing, which is...
It makes you wonder if they did actually change that form in the Guildhall to make it very, very clear.
I want to have another look at it now.
Find out. Feedback from Rob Burton in a live thing. They should change that form. Right, I'm just going to do a quick check on how some of the questions from people.
Go for it.
Sarah Hare wants to know, how is Jill Burton coping?
Oh, that's my cousin speaking.
Okay, so everyone's hello to everybody on Facebook. Nice to see you there. Have we got any questions here? No one's asking any more questions at the moment on Zoom. Remember, you can still do that down at the bottom. I'm still working through some of the questions, but there will be time at the end. Okay, so where are we at? So obviously you're ordinarily at the Royal Academy, and you were doing some assignments, weren't you, the other day?
I was, yes.
And you've got one more year.
Yes, got one more year.
So you're in the countryside. You've done all your practice for the day. What do you do to wind down? What things do you do for fun?
I do a lot of art, like a lot of art. Art is kind of my main passion alongside music, and actually my kind of dream is to balance a career doing a bit of both. And yeah, so I do lots of portrait drawings and dog portraits, and venturing into oil painting, and well, actually at the moment I've picked up a lot of commissions. So fantastic. I've got, I think, about 11 commissions that I need to crack on with.
Wow, amazing. Oh, I have
to
to look them up.
kind of yeah, but actually, if anyone watching wants to check out my art, you can find it on my website, which is robburtonsax.co.uk, and I've got like a little art section on there.
Okay.
If you're on Instagram, I've got an art Instagram, which is Rob Burton Art. No spaces, no dots or anything.
Fantastic. Oh, I shall have a look at that.
Go
Great.
for it.
So that so how long can you go without playing the saxophone? Do you get twitchy if you haven't played for a few days, or?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I find it kind of weird if I don't play. I feel like something's missing from my life, and then every time I go back to it, no matter how kind of weird it feels to come back, because I'm always a bit out of shape if I leave it a couple of days.
Yeah.
It always feels like, oh, okay, this is nice again.
And do you think it would be the same with the art? Would you find that after a few days, if you hadn't done anything artistic, then you might have that same feeling too?
Yeah, I get very rusty if I haven't done art for a few days. And I mean, it's quite hard to balance being a student in London and doing art and drawing commissions on the side. So it's actually, I think the nicest thing about being in quarantine and this whole lockdown thing is that it's given me a lot of time to do art. I'm doing hours and hours and hours a day, and I'm loving it.
Great stuff. So right, the future. Obviously, who knows what's going to happen. With this uncertain future, do you have a safe place musically where you come back to like a piece that holds very special memories, perhaps? And this is similar to Rachel Parvin, teacher, you asked us, tell us about a piece of music that you simply couldn't live without, and why is it so special to you?
Well, actually, I think one of the pieces I couldn't live without is Planel's Prelude and Solterelle, which was the piece that I played an excerpt from at the start of this webinar, if you guys heard it. And I think just because that was the piece that made me fall in love with classical saxophone, and since I first learned it when I was about 13, I've played it every single year, and I play it at every opportunity I have. If I do a recital, I will try and sneak it in the program. If I do a competition, I'm still trying to put it in the programs that I do. And it's just something that if I don't play it for a while, I miss it a lot. Like I'll be walking through Oxford Street or whatever, and I'll just be thinking, like, I'll just be humming it to myself and thinking, now what is that piece? And then I'll remember what it is. I'll be like, oh,
yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the main ones. And there's obviously so many pieces I love, but that's one that I keep coming back to.
Yeah, I have a piece that I used to play years ago on the piano, and I let it slip, and I keep thinking I should bring it back because it was the same kind of comfortable piece, and I loved it. But
what piece is it?
It's the Bach Busoni for the piano. It was the solo one, the violin by Bach.
Oh, was it?
Chacon, there's Chacon. Yeah, it was a big piece, really emotional piece, and it got me through some very difficult times. And I let it slip. And I think when I'm having a bad day, I should just go and play that, and maybe by the end I'll play a major chord. We'll see. Just depends how the day goes.
Yeah.
Right. So the thoughts on the future. Obviously, if you make an album, you'll have to do your own artwork. But would you like to do an album? Have you thought about collaborations?
Yeah, I would. I'd absolutely love to do an album. At the moment, well, over the past few years, I've had kind of a few opportunities to make an album, but I've thought that I'd rather leave it until I'm kind of at a place musically where I really, really know what I want to achieve, and kind of, because I think an album is such a special thing. The choice of music that you decide to put on there has to be something that's so you. And I know that at the moment, if I made an album, I'd probably regret the music that I put.
Well, you are still 20. There's a lot of regret you can still have at that age. I think back to when I was 20, and there's plenty of things I regret from that age.
But yeah, hopefully shortly in the future I'll start thinking about making an album, because it would be amazing to be able to have people just walking down the street listening to something that I
absolutely. And what about locations? Is there a location you'd love to play at as well?
Ooh, I'd love to play at, I think, places like the Barbican, Royal Albert Hall. Oh, and my biggest one is Wigmore Hall. That's basically my dream place to play. This past year I've gone to so many concerts at Wigmore Hall, and it's such a special venue, and it's got such a place in my heart just because I go there so often.
Yeah,
Uh, so yeah, being able to play there would be amazing, to be on the other side of the stage, I
yeah.
guess.
Well, I'm sure it will happen, without doubt. Um, Julia Roth wants to know what ideas you might have to help raise the profile of the importance of music education in schools.
Well, actually, over the past year, even though it might seem kind of obviously like a small thing to be doing, I have been going to quite a few schools and giving masterclasses and even talks to assemblies about the saxophone, about classical saxophone. For example, just before Christmas, me and my pianist went into a school, and we went to it was a primary school, and we played some music, just short selections of pieces we were going to be playing in a recital that evening, and just seeing how the face of the children just completely lit up once I started playing, and also them talking about the music, just how like magically they describe music. I'd play something, they'd say, "Oh, it sounds like you're a witch that's going through the wood and you're trying to find Goldilocks or whatever." And just that their kind of imagination, that is so rewarding. And I've been doing
Mm,
quite a lot of that recently, and I plan to do a lot more because I think if I was when I was young, people coming into school giving talks or giving examples of instruments, that was something that is completely stuck with me
yeah.
and has kind of really had an impact on how I am as a musician.
And I
So
think
yeah,
also teachers as well. If you get a good teacher who inspires you and makes you feel like anything's possible,
exactly.
then it's not just about becoming famous musician. It's about what else it gives you, isn't it? Those feelings. What really struck me the other day, when we were talking about nerves, and you said the last thing you'd want people to do is commiserate if you didn't win a competition.
Yeah,
um, and I thought that really resonated with me because it's important that people don't see music really as a competition.
exactly. And there's so I even people that I'm studying with, or any kind of professional musicians. I know there are a lot that kind of treat music kind of more as a competition than I do, and I think I'm quite lucky in the way that I was kind of um, brought up thinking about music. That if I entered a competition, I always had it in my head that if I wanted to win, that was almost like a bad thought to be having, and I didn't want to kind of preempt anything, or I didn't want to even kind of, I don't know, tempt fate or whatever.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to completely ignore any thoughts about outcome or winning. And as I've done a load of competitions from when I started the saxophone until now, and I've never even considered the outcome when either before I've performed, while I'm performing, after I've performed, or even before they announce the result. That's kind of not why I do it. And then if I don't win, then it's kind of no biggie. It's just
Yeah.
that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, you get a more, an honest performance. It's not, I can't think of the word, but forced in any way, is it?
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
honest. So, okay. Right. There's some more questions. So being in isolation, has it made you think differently about music and the world? What positives can you draw from this whole situation?
I think there's a lot of positives to draw from this. I mean, beforehand, my life was kind of a bit hectic. It was kind of I was very much in a routine of waking up at 6 a.m., then going in to do my practice, and then doing all the things I do in a day and all my rehearsals and prep for concerts and everything. And then I'd go to sleep, and then the next day would be the same. And it's really nice having a break because I think it's made me think more about kind of who I want to be as a musician. It's also given me a break also, so that I'm not constantly thinking, kind of taking every day as it comes, in a way, kind of not like, okay, I'm going to practice this today and then I'm practicing this tomorrow and then the next day and the next day. It's kind of allowed me to kind of think about the bigger picture and plan more for my future, kind of what I want to do as a career, and kind of, I think it's allowed me to dream a little bit more than I was doing beforehand.
I think that's something that's happening at the moment, isn't it? People apparently are dreaming a lot more.
Yeah.
I've been reading an interesting book about sleep, and I think we're probably getting more of the REM sleep, which is why we're dreaming. But dreaming is a part of processing as well. So definitely something's going on with sleep at the moment. Oh, right. So I've got a couple more questions coming in. So Jane Plumage, have you recorded any music, and is that something you'd like to do? Obviously, you could give a big check out to your YouTube page.
Yes, so I've got a YouTube page. Hasn't got a load of music on there at the moment,
Yep.
But it's got a few things that you can check out if you want to hear more of me playing. It's also got a performance from the grand final of the BBC Musician Competition, if you would like to check
Listen,
that out.
yeah.
Yes. But apart from that, I haven't, obviously, as I've just said, I haven't recorded an album or anything yet. But over the next year, depends what happens with lockdown, I do plan to kind of record some more music and make some more videos and do lots of things like that, which I'm really excited about.
So have you made friends with a good accompanist at the Royal Academy? I gather from Matilda that everyone wants to just tries to sort of grab a pianist when they get there.
Exactly, yeah. And no, I've been incredibly lucky, actually. I've actually quite recently, over only the past few months, been playing with an amazing pianist called Yuan Fan Yang, and he was actually a BBC Young Musician grand finalist for 4 years before me, I think.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite rare that two grand finalists play together, but obviously that shows
that'll be your thing on your flyers. You're like, oh.
Exactly. So it's nice to be playing with him. We've done some recitals and have exciting plans for the future.
Fantastic. And so Jane's got another question. Have you had any problems health-wise because you play so much? Can you overdo it?
Yeah, I think you can. Well, I've had lots of friends that have various problems, and I have actually had a quite bad wrist problem over the past few years. I actually this time last year I had to take almost a month off playing because I had such bad wrist problems. It wasn't caused by playing the saxophone, I don't think, but playing saxophone certainly didn't help. So I think being wary and listening to your body is one of the most important things. And I've, over the past year, got quite into Alexander technique. So I'm currently learning more how to listen to my body and kind of react to things and try and kind of improve my awareness of how I'm playing the instrument, because you spend so much time playing your instrument each day, and if you're doing something badly or overarching your back or slouching or even have bad wrist posture, you're going to be causing issues. So it's good to be aware of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think I should look into that. Right, I'm going to just check out some more questions on Facebook. Tess Ratcliffe wants to know, how do you motivate yourself to practice?
The main thing that I think I can say about this is just, well, what helps with me is like making a plan, really. If I wake up and I don't have a plan of what I'm going to practice or when I'm going to practice, I'll probably do it quite reluctantly. But if I kind of wake up knowing that, okay, I'm going to do my practice from this time to this time, and this is what I want to achieve, and this is what I need to work on, this is what I want to improve, I think that is the one thing that really helps me. But I also think that listening to as much music as possible is also great, because then it gives you kind of something to strive for. And sometimes I'll forget to listen to some classical music for a week or so, and then I'm like, why am I practicing again? But by listening, you kind of realize, like, oh yeah, because I can make something as magical as this. I can produce these amazing effects that lights up my imagination. So yeah, I guess those are the two main things.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I think we've probably. I can't get to see all the questions on Facebook. I know we've had a few comments there, so I'm just going to just do a last shout out if you've got any questions. No, otherwise I shall start wrapping up. I think. Well, I think we're gonna start wrapping up. Okay, so Rob, thank you so much. It's been brilliant, really, really brilliant. You know, I've spoken to you a few times now, and every time I do, you always just, you know, you always give me a big smile on my face and raise my spirit. So thank you so much. It's been great to hear about your life. And I was delighted to hear that similarly you're from a farming background, and also encouraged that whilst your parents have a clear love of music, you perhaps didn't have the perceived advantage of having musical parents. So I'm sure everyone that's joined us tonight will enjoy following your careers as much as I will too. To all the viewers, Facebook and here, thank you for joining us, and I hope you feel like tonight's been good value. I feel like we've learned a lot, and if you feel like you may have paid for tonight's session, there's no pressure, but you could always consider a donation to the Awards for Young Musicians charity, who have also, you know, helped Rob out in the past. They also help with instruments, tuition, courses, and travel and software and stuff. So you can visit our website to find details about them. And obviously, I must give a big thank you to Yamaha for sponsoring our event tonight. Without their generosity, tonight just wouldn't have happened. Yamaha is a brand for musicians from beginning to pro, and as we've heard, they've been at the core of Rob's saxophone journey, and I look forward to meeting more of their inspirational artists in the future, if they'll let me have them. And finally, thanks to everyone that's watched tonight, whether on Zoom or Facebook. Your support means that we can hopefully continue to hold these events. So if you've enjoyed tonight, do let me know and join me in the next one, whenever or wherever that may be. And don't forget, John Packer is still very much open for business on our website, johnpacker.co.uk. We have free delivery at the moment to mainland UK, where you can visit the website for details. And that's it. Good night. Stay safe and keep making music. And yeah, thanks so much. It's been great. Thank you, Rob.
See you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.